Hello all, let us discuss about some of the good tips that need to be followed during the PCB design. Okay, so this is not something new, but we just try to list down as new guys get into the field and they tend to struggle in the initial days. So, the first thing, when a PCB designer starts his activity, he should not jump into the PCB design directly. He should first understand the circuit functionality, which is very important. Okay, and PCB design engineer has all is always must always be in sync with the design engineer. That is a very important thing, and he should get insights of the circuit design from the design engineer before starting any PCB activity. So there must be a tight bond between the design engineer, there must be an understanding of the circuit, and before doing anything, after understanding the circuit functionality, PCB design engineer should start segregating the critical design interfaces and the critical nets associated with those interfaces. That is a very important step. And if there are critical interfaces associated, like example, if you take a commercial board which has a USB, we are talking about low frequency signals here. We haven't gone to the high speed signals. So if you take normal microcontroller board, USB is the most critical thing, right? So the design engineer, especially the PCB layout engineer, has to get to know the standards, like what impedance it need to be routed, what should be the spacing, if there are wires to be placed, can he place them, and what could be the consequences, how should be the breakout at the connector. So these all he should get to know, and especially for some of the interfaces, the PCB layout engineer has to study the standards. And one more important point is when the PCB layout design is done right, the PCB layout engineer has to know how the PCB currents are flowing, because we have the actual signal path and then the return path. So understanding the return path, how the current flows in a PCB is very important to route the signals, especially in high speed designs. This plays a very crucial role. And jumping back again to the start of the PCB activity, PCB layout engineer, while understanding the circuit functionality, has to come up with the floor plan where the placement, everything is discussed, and placement plays a very crucial role, because once the placement is done and you start routing and you realize that there need to be a drastic change in the placement of the components, it becomes very difficult to reroute the other signal. So the first thing, floor planning, getting the placement done, and then reviewing and getting to know how and planning before how they can be routed is a very important step. These are very basic steps. As we go along, we will talk more on some other tips for the PCB design engineer to succeed. PCB design is a very critical activity in the design flow, and the success of a project, most percentage, depends on how the PCB comes out. So there should be a tight bond, as we said, between the PCB design engineer and the electrical engineer who did the circuit design. Thank you.